Valentine's Day, the holiday of love, roses, and candlelit dinners. But not all hearts beat with romance. Some echo with dread. This story isn't fiction. It's the terrifying tale of a Valentine's Day that turned into a nightmare. A night soaked not in wine, but in blood. What started as a date ended in a disappearance, and the truth was buried beneath chocolates and silk. Listen closely, because this true Valentine's Day horror story might make you think twice before answering the door with flowers in your hands. February 7th. Julia Whitmore, a quiet 24-year-old florist, had just closed her small shop in the heart of town when she found a note slipped onto the glass door. The envelope was crimson red, her name elegantly written in gold ink. Inside it read, "I see the way your eyes light up when you arrange lilies. You deserve a real Valentine. I'll come for you soon." There was no signature. She laughed it off, assuming it was a prank from one of her friends. But every day that week, another note arrived, each one more intense than the last. One said, "You don't know me yet, but you will. I already know you." The next read, "Red is your color. I saw you wear it last week. Beautiful." By February 13th, Julia was unnerved. She hadn't worn red in public since New Year's Eve. That night, she double-checked the locks on her apartment door. Her cat, Oliver, meowed softly as she pulled down the blinds. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. "Tomorrow, you'll be mine." She stared at the message until her vision blurred. The number was local, and she hadn't given it to anyone recently. The morning of February 14th arrived with soft snowfall and icy winds. Julia, anxious and sleep-deprived, tried to bury herself in work at her flower shop. Valentine's Day was her busiest day of the year. Dozens of customers came in, but none seemed out of place until a tall man in a black coat walked in just before closing. He didn't say a word at first, just stared at the bouquets. Then he pointed to a dozen blood-red roses. "These," he said in a gravelly voice. Julia nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she wrapped them in brown paper. As he paid in cash, he looked up and smiled. "Do you believe in love at first sight?" She forced a nervous laugh. "Not really." His smile didn't fade. "Shame. I do." Then he left, the shop door chiming softly behind him. Julia tried to shake the feeling off. Maybe it was nothing. But when she closed the register and went to lock the front door, another note was already tucked onto the glass. This one read, "You look scared today. Don't be. I'll make it painless." Heart pounding, Julia ran to her car, parked under the flickering street lamp. She felt like she was being watched. That night, at home, she ignored another text. "Check your doorstep." But curiosity won. She opened the door slowly. A heart-shaped box sat on the welcome mat. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a single human tooth. Julia didn't sleep. She called the police the next morning. They took the notes in the box, but gave her little comfort. Could be a prank, they said. Still, they agreed to patrol the area. Feeling unsafe, Julia decided to crash at her friend Madison's apartment upstairs. Madison agreed instantly, worried for Julia's safety. That night, as they drank wine and tried to distract themselves with old horror movies, there was a sudden knock at the door. Julia froze. Madison peeked through the peephole. "No one's there," she whispered. But when they opened it cautiously, another red envelope lay on the floor. It read, "You moved, but I'm still close." Madison's apartment overlooked a narrow alley. Julia stared out the window, scanning the shadows below. That's when she saw it. Faint movement from the old basement apartment 2 floors down, the one that had been vacant for months. The lights were on. A figure moved past the curtain. "Someone's living there again?" Julia asked. Madison shook her head. "That place has been empty since the fire." Unable to ignore it, Julia made a report to the landlord. But when he checked the next morning, the apartment was locked tight. No one inside. Yet footprints had appeared in the snow leading to its door, but not away from it. That night, Julia had a dream. She was lying on a bed of roses, unable to scream, as someone whispered, "I've finally found you." She woke up with a scream. The sound of someone pacing above her echoed through the ceiling. But Madison's apartment was the top floor. Julia couldn't take it anymore. She took time off work and begged the police to investigate deeper. but with no proof of who was behind the stalking. All they could offer was a wellness check every few days. Desperate, Julia installed a hidden camera outside Madison's door. That night, she and Madison watched from the shadows as the hallway remained quiet until 3:08 a.m. A figure stepped into view. A man in black, face hidden behind a hood. He bent down and gently placed a note in front of the door. Then, instead of leaving, he turned slowly toward the camera and smiled. The footage froze. Madison gasped. "That's the same guy from your shop." Julia called the police again. This time, they identified the man, Philip Crane. He lived 3 buildings over. A local oddball who had been arrested years ago for stalking a woman who mysteriously vanished. The charges never stuck. Police issued a warning, but said they couldn't arrest him without direct threat or evidence. Julia, exhausted and terrified, packed her bags and decided to leave town for a while. On the morning of February 16th, she was ready to board a bus. But before leaving Madison's building, she took one last look at the hallway. A rose lay at her door. Fresh, still dewy. She screamed. Madison came running. They checked the hallway cam again. This time, the footage cut to static at exactly 3:08 a.m. Julia never made it to the bus station. She was reported missing 2 days later. Madison, frantic and blaming herself, pushed the police to investigate Philip Crane's building. They broke into his apartment on February 20th. What they found would haunt them forever. The inside was a shrine, walls covered in photos of Julia, taken without her knowledge. At work, at home, even inside Madison's apartment window, there were notes, petals, locks of hair, and in the corner of the room, a heart-shaped box identical to the one Julia had found, this time filled with jewelry, fingernails, and a single eye. But Julia wasn't there. The basement apartment of Madison's building was searched again. This time, the police found something new, a hidden door behind the old water heater. It led to a narrow, dark corridor. At the end of it was a room filled with rose petals. And in the center, a bed. Julia lay there, eyes wide open, mouth sewn shut with red thread. Her body had been posed gently, dressed in a crimson gown. In her hand was the final note. "Now you're mine. Forever my Valentine." The media called it the Valentine stalker case. And every year on February 14th, someone leaves a rose on Madison's doorstep. No one ever sees who, but the camera still cuts to static at exactly 3:08 a.m.